Wonderful. Hello and welcome to Eclipse Circular's webinar series. My name is Inchiden Soma, and with my colleagues, Karis Hoffman, we both from Eclipse World Secretariat, and we are the facilitator and the host today. First, welcome you all to our webinar today. So this webinar series take a deep dive into actionable cases in 5 different sectors that make our city much more circular. And today our topic is about circular textile and fashion. And before I introduce you our very exciting list of speakers today, I would like to first share with you some of the housekeeping rules. First, the session has been recorded, and which also allow you to refer back to this video or share it with your friends and colleagues. You can always refer back to this recording from the website here you see on the screen. And of course, during the webinar, we want it to be as interactive as possible. And if you have any question regarding the content presented from the speaker, or generally question you have regarding this particular topic, we invite you to input your question into the Q&A function, and we would address your question at the very end of the session, where we have a designated time for your questions. Yes, do feel free to introduce yourself from the chat box, especially tell us where do you come from. It's always make it much nicer that we can link to the names to the specific locations, especially always very, very nice way to see that during this sort of online event. So during this webinar, you will see lots of very interesting projects, cases, or different kind of tools we use it to make our textile industry and make our city more circular. We also invite you to share with us about the cases you know, or the cases, the project you are working with in the chat box. At Eclipse, we aim to produce a document about all the best practice in this area, or the one we think is very interesting word to share, and would like to also produce a publication and share with you. Thank you very much. So today on the screen you see, as promised, we have a very intense programs from very, very interesting speaker we have invited for you today. First, we have Karis Hoffman. She is a junior officer from Eclipse Secretariat Circular Development Team. And then we have Maria. Maria is a team leader of circular economy from European Unions. And with Ola. Ola is a project manager, particularly for the textile program from the leading think tank, Circle Economy. The 3 speakers I would I respect them to talk more about the tools and the projects more at the global or regional scales. And then for the 2 following speaker, so we have Rastan from CSAP. And CSAP is South Scania West Company, and CSAP recycle and treat waste from household and industry in Thousand Skåne, if I pronounce it right, in Sweden. And we have Yomi, and Yomi is the director of relationship network and organization, and from Circular Economy Innovation Partnership, and based in Lagos in Nigeria. So from the 2 speakers, we expect to see more actionable cases and projects more in the kind of local scales from both global north and global south cities, which gives us a very interesting insight for different kind of circularity activity in different world regions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you our first speaker, Karis. And Karis, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome you all warmly to the fourth webinar that we have in this series focused on circular textiles and fashion. So next up, I'll take you through basically a thematic introduction to the topic of circular textiles, and I'll show you why we need circularity in textiles and how we can promote circularity in textiles using specific strategies that we've developed. So first of all, we would like to look at the challenges of the linear economy as they pertain to cities. So we know that cities globally consume 75% of the world's natural resources. Cities are also responsible for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and they produce 50% of global waste. So we really see that our activity is focused in cities. This is where most of our resources are consumed. And this is why it's important to see how we can implement circularity in all sectors that we have. And so specifically looking at the challenges of the linear textile economy for cities, the extraction and production of textiles, we see that there's 3.3 billion megatons of greenhouse gases produced by the textile industry every year. So this amounts to about 10% of global GHG emissions, which is about, I think, the estimate that is also said for transport. So this is a really significant part of, or a share of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And also it's very resource intensive towards water. So the estimate is that there's 215 trillion liters of water being used yearly by the textile industry. So this, of course, leads to pressures that are seen in our resources, but also beyond looking at the economic factors, it's also challenging in terms of social factors. So we see that the conditions for factory workers are not good, and also especially at the end of life, there's also a lot of consequences for inhabitants of cities who are under water, air, and soil pollution stress. And also the landfilling of garments and hazardous chemicals create waste management challenges for cities. So these are the pressures there. And then if we look at why we need circularity in the textile value chain, we see that circular economy has produced the estimate that only 8.6% of our resources are actually revalorized. So we are only 8.6% circular. And that's why we really need to close the loop in the textile value chain to retain the valuable materials that we're using. And we can use them for a longer time to also reduce the extraction and the stress on ecosystems. And we know that end-of-pipe solutions are not going to solve the issue, that we really need to design and regulate for reducing extraction and using our materials for longer. So together with Circular Economy, Metabolic, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we've developed the Circular City Actions Framework. And this is what you can see in the bottom of the screen. We have different strategies that relate to the 5 R's. So on our side, the 5 R's are rethink, regenerate, reduce, reuse, and recover. And these are points of the linear economic model where we can step in with these strategies. So they have certain points where we can step in and make changes. And the way that this framework works is very holistic. So we look at the whole value chain as you see it here, and then see what particular strategies we can implement towards this end. So just to give you a bit more background on the Circular City Actions Framework, overall we have 5 strategies, and each of the 5 strategies that I just mentioned, they have particular sub-strategies. So we have 15 strategies in total. And this webinar is built around understanding in which, what the examples are, what the best practices are to actually tackle these 5 strategies in cities. And the Circular City Actions Framework was developed as part of the Circular Lab for Cities project. So the Circular Lab for Cities program is developed to support cities worldwide to take the next step in their circular economy journey. And to that end, we're developing online and offline tools So the Circular City Actions Framework is one of the tools that really provides the basis for this program. And then we also have the tool Ganbate, which is developed by Circular Economy, which helps cities to take the first step in identifying where they can get started with circularity. And Metabolic is also developing a tool that helps cities build sustainability challenges that they can use to take further advanced steps. So here is an overview over the program. We have different knowledge products developed like the Actions Framework, but we also have the Knowledge Hub, which I encourage you to explore. We have a lot of case studies there. So if you're interested, you can also follow. We have it also partitioned under the different strategies. So you can explore that. And then the online tools are Ganbate and the Metabolic Act tool, as I've mentioned previously. And then we're also piloting the different tools with cities worldwide from 5 different world regions. And as part of this program, cities are getting guidance for planning their circular interventions. So as part of this program, we're developing mini circularity roadmaps with cities. Okay, so just to give you some examples along the Circular City Actions Framework as it pertains to circular textiles. So the first strategy, Rethink, is really about rethinking the system. So we don't want to follow business as usual. We actually want to lay down the foundation for circular activities and enable the transition. So what local governments can do here to support this is to eliminate eliminate linear incentives and incentivize circular practices and support the development of closed loop systems and different cross-sectoral synergies, as well as incentivizing the shift towards sustainable lifestyles. So here, for example, we could see that cities can procure garments for workers that are eco-designed, for example, so that we don't contribute to fast fashion in that area. And later we will see a few circular textile initiatives in Lagos, Nigeria that fit with this strategy. And next, the strategy Regenerate is really about harmonizing with nature. So here we want to promote infrastructure and production systems and sourcing that allow natural ecosystems to thrive. So what cities and local governments can do here is work to protect and restore local ecosystems, promote solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, and prioritize renewable resources. So an example here, for example, would be to use renewable resources in textile sourcing so that materials like hemp, for example, that grow really fast can be used in garments so that, yeah, there's less waste as well, and the resource is renewable. And next, the reduce strategy is all about doing better with less. So this is about designing infrastructure and processes to minimize material and energy consumption, as well as waste that is generated during production, use, and end of life. So cities and local governments here can work to design infrastructure and the built environment for resource efficiency, as well as support circular and resource efficient business innovations and local low impact circular economies. So an example here is the city of Jaipur in India. They have supported the construction of the Jaipur Integrated Texcraft Park Private Limited, an eco-friendly textile production park with facilities for water recycling, rainwater harvesting, and energy conservation. And this park is also taking steps to protect the safety and the health of textile workers. And then another strategy that we have is the reuse strategy. So the idea here is to use the materials for longer and more often. So this means that we extend the use of existing resources, products, and spaces. And local governments can take actions here to design and regulate for extended use, facilitate the development of secondhand markets, sharing and exchange platforms, as well as support reuse, repair, and remanufacturing. An example for this is the Where Next textile recycling campaign in New York. So New York saw that there's a lot of materials that is actually landing in their landfills. So they decided to launch the Where Next campaign to spread awareness about this. And they collaborated with retail partners, recyclers, and collectors to develop a map that shows different collection sites. And this map was spread around a lot and led to an increase in drop-offs and also interest from other cities who are then also working towards promoting this. And lastly, we have the recovery strategy. So the idea here is really to make waste history to maximize the recovery of resources at the end of the use phase and reintroduce them to production processes. So here, cities and local governments can work to design and regulate for separation and recovery, collect and sort waste to facilitate recovery, and process waste and ensure its re-entry into the industry at its highest value. So later, Rustan will be introducing us to the first circular large-scale facility for textile sorting in Weimar. Okay, so now I'll hand back to Ingshi, who will announce the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Caris, for sharing with us this very interesting fire action framework and the applied cases in different work regions. And yes, and now I would like to give the microphone to Maria. And Maria is again the team lead of circular economy at European Commission. So very much looking forward to learn about the activity and the initiative developed by the European Commission. The floor is yours, Maria. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this workshop. I believe that public authorities have a key role to make sure that we together achieve the vision of the EU textile strategy. I'll share my presentation with you all. This presentation will be after circulated. Unfortunately, I cannot stay until the end of the workshop, so I could not join the other panelists into the Q&A session, but my email is in the presentation, so please don't hesitate to drop me a line if you have any question. So now I'll see where I have my presentation. I had it open and now I cannot see it. So let's go with this one.
Yes, we have it now.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I believe that you see my presentation, but not in the mode I want it. I'll move this here. Okay, so first of all, I would like to frame a little bit the work on sustainability and circularity of textiles. As you might know, the European Commission adopted in 2020 the second Circular Economy Action Plan that really puts the emphasis on making sustainable products the norm. And this action plan follows a little bit and builds up on the work that we had initiated in 2015. I'm aware that members of ICLEI and other public authorities around the world and across Europe are familiar with these two action plans, whereas the first one was looking at really closing the loop and boosting the market for secondary raw materials. This second one focuses on actions and instruments to extend the lifespan of products and make it more sustainable. So they become the norm and not the exception when consumers look for them in the EU market. And the action plan does this by looking and proposing actions within what we call the Sustainable Product Policy Framework that you have in the green box, and it is a framework that is articulated in three pillars: making sustainable products a norm, with design at the core, then empowering consumers and public authorities, a key role as well here again for green or sustainable public procurement, and of course mainstreaming resource efficiency along production processes so they become more sustainable in Europe. The focus today of my presentation would be on the arrow, on the part of the arrow the circle and the box that is in pink, because you can see there what the action plan identifies as key value chains. Why is this important? Because the value chains had been identified by looking at those that had potential when applying the sustainable product policy framework. So designed for sustainability, sustainable consumption, and sustainable production processes. You have in the pin box the 7 that were identified in the action plan, and today we will focus on the action that has been ongoing for 2 years already regarding the value chain, the sector textiles. Why we need to act, I don't think I need to spend much time on this. I'm sure you are all familiar and aware of the impacts of EU consumption of textiles. A recent study from the European Environmental Agency has determined that the EU consumption of textile constitutes the 4th highest impact on the environment and climate change, followed or only after food, housing, and mobility. But it's not only the impacts broadly seen of European consumption, it's also what we do at the end of life of these textiles, how we manage textile waste. Two key figures you have in the slides. On one hand, the amount of textile waste generated, which is increasing day by day because as well the consumption of textiles continue increasing, and we see that there's a shortening of the use phase of these textiles. The same European Environmental Agency says that about 5.8 million tons of textile are discarded every year in the EU. But what top ups this problem is that at the moment we are not properly recycling it, this textile waste. And this is reflected on the fact that only 1% of the material used to produce new clothing is recycled from new clothing. So what we call textile to textile recycling. Unfortunately, we don't have data at EU level, but I think this figure extrapolates quite well on the fact that regardless if in the EU it's 2 points above the 1%, is still very low. What gives us a little bit of hope or that this landscape can change is that almost 9 out of 10 Europeans think that clothing should made to last longer. We see more and more an interest from consumers, not only on the social dimension of sustainability of textiles, so looking at the protection of worker rights and worker proper working conditions, but also on the fact that they need to be made to last longer with a lower environmental and carbon footprint, and really taking into account the impact that are made in the production facilities in manufacturing countries. Well, I have painted quite a dark scenario for textile, but it is not that. It is the textile sector is one of the key sectors for the European economy. So the purpose of the strategy that I will present in a minute is not only to address the environmental and social impacts, but also to continue fostering the innovation of the textile sector, the textile ecosystem, to boost the attractiveness, creativity, and innovation potential of the sector, especially in Europe, where it's key for creative industries, and of course offer an opportunity to tap into new markets, not only for consumer, but also for the industry, with the potential to generate jobs that this entails. It has been estimated that between 20 to 35 jobs can be created from 1,000 tons of textiles that are collected. So in a nutshell, that is a cost for action, and this is how the Commission is suggesting and proposing, together with main stakeholders in the sector, to really address these impacts. And it's with the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. Just as a side note, this strategy, it is a communication from the Council to the other institution that lays down a comprehensive framework, pulling together different strands of work that cover the whole life cycle of products. In the very same spirit of the circular economy, the strategy looks at design, extraction of raw materials, looks at consumption, use phase, and of course tries to improve and boost recyclability and recycling of textile and a market for recycled fibers for textiles. This strategy, the first thing that does is to lay out the vision for the sector from now to 2030. And it is a quite ambitious vision that the strategy tries to respond to by signaling actions, regulatory, but also software actions that can help public authorities, industry, consumers, and of course, the EU in general to achieve it. And this vision is based on the fact that by 2030, all textile products that are placed on the EU market will be durable, repairable, and recyclable to the extent possible, made of recycled fibers. This entails as well that they are free of hazardous substances and produced respecting social rights. This is coupled with this strong interest in moving away from fast fashion to make it out of fashion. So not only increasing the quality of the textile of fashion that is put in the EU market by all the actions that contribute to make them durable, repairable, and recyclable, but also changing a little bit the consumer mindset so they can appreciate more the impact of their purchasing the options and choices, but also because they find profitable reuse and repair services that of course are available. And then for this is necessary that producers take responsibility for the products along the value chain. Finally, and looking at the end of life, of course, we need to really work to increase the capacities for recycling. So incineration and landfilling is reduced to the minimum. How do we do this? Well, the strategy identifies several key actions. 6 of them you have in this slide. The first one is looking at performance requirements for textiles that will set design requirements. These design requirements will be introduced under the Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. I want to stop here a second. I need to check if I have another slide, so I will not stop that much. Then stopping the destruction of unsold and returned textiles. The strategy also identified action to address the unintentional release of microplastics. Then, of course, increase more information on textiles via the digital product passport, tackle greenwashing, and as well establish mandatory standard producer responsibility for textiles. As I was saying, the eco-design requirements will be introduced via the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. This the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, as you know, it's a proposal at the moment from the Commission that is being discussed by the Council and the European Parliament. This proposal, what it does is to expand the scope of the Eco-Design Directive that up until now applies to energy-related products, and also expand the scope by introducing new requirements, not only focusing on material efficiency and energy efficiency. How this is applicable to textile? By looking at those performance eco-design requirements that makes sense to have for textiles. For instance, durability, reusability, reparability, fiber-to-fiber recyclability, and mandatory recycled fiber content, or minimizing and tracing the presence of substances of concern. Then mandatory criteria for green public procurement can also be explored. It is also part of the toolbox of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, the possibility of establishing a transparency obligation to publicly disclose what products are discarded or destroyed from those that are not sold or are returned, and then the possibility of looking if establishing a ban. The co-design requirements also help to address the release of microplastics. Textiles is one of the major sources of unintentional release of microplastics, and we really want to address this. This is also coupled with an upcoming initiative that will look in general to the unintentional release of microplastics, including textiles, but also tires, and paints. And finally, via the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, we will be able as well to set information requirements and to build up a digital product passport for textiles. A key word of caution here, I'm talking about really the future. What we have now is a proposal of the European Commission on this Eco-Design regulation. This proposal is being negotiated by the Council and the Parliament, and then once adopted is when the Commission will be entitled to adopt implementing measures of this Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. This regulation sets an horizontal framework, and then it will be adopted later looking at product categories. It works exactly as in the same way as the current Eco-Design Directive. It is expected that textile is one of the first product categories to be tackled, and these are some of the elements that can be included in this implementing measure. The co-design for sustainable product, the strategy also looks at tackling greenwashing of textile products with those two instruments that are applied at horizontal level. On one hand, giving consumers better rights to tackle greenwashing. So green claims should be substantiated and underpinned by recognized environmental performance tools. And then later this year, we will adopt as well an initiative to substantiate environmental claims on a basis of minimum criteria. This is to say that when a textile product says that it's sustainable only because it had included, I don't know, organic cotton, the consumer really understands what is the environmental footprint of these textiles. And then, of course, this will include as well the review of the eco-label criteria for textile that it had labeled that awards at EU level the excellence in environmental performance for textile and footwear. We could not look at the whole life cycle without stopping for a second on waste. And here I believe that there's a key element that is important for public authorities, that is the upcoming obligation to establish separate collection of textile waste by 2025. This obligation was introduced in the revision of the Waste Framework Directive in 2018. What we will look into doing now is in proposing a harmonized standard producer responsibility rules for textiles. And this rule will not only look into improving the management of the end of life, but also on increasing waste prevention measures. Later, in a couple of years, because we don't have the raw data at the moment, because the obligation to separate collection, it's not in place in all member states at the moment, we will look into the possibility of setting targets for preparing and reuse and recycling. And for that, we had started already preparatory work with a feasibility study looking precisely on these issues. As usual, with all the strategies and communications from the Commission, we have as well a chapter in the strategy looking at how to support these transformations. For industry and for public authorities, you have in this slide some of the elements that really will help to support the changes. For instance, all that has to do with ensuring proper market surveillance to ensure that there's a well-functioning internal market, as well research and innovation and investments, specifically in supporting infrastructure for recycling, sorting and collection, and of course enhancing skills for workers in the textile sectors, with particular attention to women. The last slide focuses on the global dimension. I don't want to forget that textile is a global value chain. Many of the fashion in particular that is put in the EU market is coming from third countries, for countries outside the EU. Countries that will need to respect the design requirements that will be set up in the future. But up until that moment, what the Union is working on is to supporting this global fair process by fostering dialogues in international fora, as well looking into how to improve the decent work conditions. And on this area, two very important initiatives from the European Commission, an obligation on due diligence for companies that is horizontal but covers textiles as well, to identify and as much as possible mitigate and reduce impacts on human rights and the environment. And then an initiative that will come in September this year, if I'm not incorrect, or this year at least, that is legislation prohibiting the placing on the EU market of products made by forced labor, which is very relevant for textiles, in particular what has to do with forced child labor. Also, it's important that the EU doesn't export the challenges away. And this is important in the case of textile, where many times the EU exports textile waste and what is not textile waste to third countries. And most of the cases, these waste end up in landfillings with no control or environmentally sound treatment. So that's why in the context of the revision of the waste shipment regulation, it has been included an obligation of notification of export of waste in general, including textile, when this export takes place on non-OECD countries. And then it will be allowed only if it's proven that it's managed sustainably. And then there's work ongoing, or is about to start, on the possibility on agreeing with industry on certain criteria requirements to really clarify this gray zone between what is textile waste and what is secondhand textile products. With this, I will give back the floor to the chair. I will leave these two slides in the presentation that you will receive that focus on in particular two initiatives to support engagement with the stakeholders. The Refashion Now is a campaign to really foster new sustainable consumption models of fashion among consumers and citizens. And then the transition pathway that is more targeted into engaging with the industry on co-creating a process to ensure that the sector is prepared for a digital and green transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Really, personally feel really great to see you. I feel really a lot of energy really spent in this area. Thank you for the strategy, the action plan, and the initiative pipeline you have shared with us.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking, while you're still with us, I know you are busy, very busy. Do you think you have a time maybe for one question?
Yes, of course. If I even took a few minutes over my slots, of course, yes.
That's no problem. It's always great to see like the presentation is definitely very valuable. So it's a question from Helena. Helena is my colleague from ICLE European Secretariats. So Helena has a question. Is the European Commission planning to have a third circular economy action plan in coming years? If so, what might be included in the next action plan or strategy?
Thank you. I must say that is a quite looking forward question. At the moment, we are deep into the implementation of the second one. We had a milestone on the 30th of March with this circular economy package. We are heading towards another milestone with the second circular economy package that will be expected in end of November, if I'm correct, and will cover plastics and the Green Claims Initiative I have mentioned. So as regard of plastics in particular, the policy framework on bio-based and biodegradable and compostable plastics. And then it's true that we will head into the year where the initiative of the proposal from the Commission is slowed down a little bit because we will be in a moment where we will be preparing for the European elections in 2024. I see potential for continuing the transition to a circular economy, and I see key areas where we really need to continue working. First of all, to really support that we implement correctly and full of energy and bringing on board all the stakeholders, the really transformative initiative that is the Co-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. We really need to continue exploring the nexus between climate and circular economy. And really, we really need to position circular economy as a key policy and a really effective tool to address the needs to break some dependencies. The crisis in Ukraine, the COVID outbreak has shown that we really need to be prepared for shocks in value chains, and I think circular economy help us to be more autonomous. So these are the three areas that, in my view, we really need to continue supporting to really make the transition to a circular economy fully in the European Union.
Thank you, Maria. Let us work on this together.
Yeah,
Thank you for being with us.
Okay, thank you very much, and I remain available in written for any other question. Thank you.
Now I would like to give the floor to Ola. As I promised today, we have very interesting speaker and contents we would like to offer to you. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ola, and floor is yours, Ola.
Thank you so much. And I don't know if Maria is still here, but thank you, Maria, for painting this bit dark picture, but also showing us this holistic approach that the textile strategy is offering. Very, very, always so keen to hear all of this. 1 second, share my screen. There it is. I think it's low. Okay, do you see me full screen now?
Yes.
I'm hoping. Great. Great. My name is Ola Bukowska, and I'm joining you today from Circular Economy, and specifically from our Textiles program, which is running since 2014 with a mission to achieve a zero-waste textiles industry. And I believe we've heard a lot about the issues, social and environmental, caused by the textiles waste just now from Maria. We're very, very well aware of them. So the only thing I would like to highlight is that in our mission, we're looking at reducing the existing waste through multi-stakeholder projects, enabling data and technology, and scaling infrastructure, for example, for pilot projects. But we also work on the other end of the value chain, so preventing the textiles waste by working with mainly apparel brands and businesses to grow their capacity to adopt circular strategies in product design and product manufacturing. So why the circular economy for textiles industry? There's a lot that has been said today, so I'll just run very smoothly through this. How we like to see it is that waste is nothing more than a failed relationship, as Jonathan Chapman said. So the reason, well, just going to leave it there, but the reason the things become waste is because perhaps the purpose behind them or the design behind them is somehow a flawed concept and not a satisfying proposition. for consumers and for citizens. And where we think this modern proposition is rooted is the concept of planned obsolescence. And this is the concept as old as 1932, which actually had really ambitious and positive motivations behind it, which was to provide work to people and grow the economy, which was devastated after the financial crisis. But to be honest, the concept introduced by Bernard London, which was meant to be a governmental policy regulating the lifespan of products and then making sure that products become obsolete at the point which is right for them, this idea actually didn't fly back then. But what happened 20 years ago is that actually the industry started picking up this idea purely to maintain the scale of growth and grow its growth. So what happened, especially in the textiles industry, and shown here on the example from DuPont, the chemical multinational, is the example of tights. So if you're able to create nylon tights, which can last basically forever, and you can create just one pair per one user, it's great from perspective of durability. However, it's not so great from perspective of, growing your sales and growing your markets. So actually what happened was that this ultra durable pair of tights was created, but then it was removed from the market after testing. And what has been recommended is to create tights that would actually break faster so that people consume them more. And this, as we know, happens to multiple products that surround us, that their lifespan is shorter than what it could be. And now there's another aspect, especially persistent in the textiles and fashion industry, which is perceived obsolescence. So it's not only that products don't last as long as they could, it's just that we perceive them to be obsolete at the time when they could still serve us very, very well. And that's, of course, a driving force behind fast fashion, but we could say, I don't really like to refer to fast fashion as being worse than other fashion, because to be honest, I think the whole industry has been profiting from this very, very much. And this is actually not a new concept. We call it the Diderot effect. So Diderot in late 18th century said, I was the absolute master of my old robe, and I am the slave to my new one. And I think we can very much personally relate to what he means by that, because it simply means if you change one element in your lifestyle, you might get this perception that you need to change everything else that surrounds it so that everything matches together and everything fits. And this, of course, brings us to overconsumption. And it's not a new concept. We've been thriving on it as Western and highly developed societies, at least since the 50s. This is what has kept our economies going and our citizens thriving. But, unfortunately, the way to maintain this growth, and the only way we've practiced so far as citizens of citizens of highly developed economies, is that we know how to create a productive economy, but the cost of creating this highly productive economy is that things need to be constantly consumed, and then they need to be constantly burned up, says Victor Lebov, and replaced and discarded. And we need to accelerate this rate because we've got a global population that wants to enjoy the same benefits. And also, interestingly, Lebov links this to our ego satisfaction and our spiritual satisfaction. So we've created this society where consumer goods are kind of part of our self-realization, are part of rituals, as he says. So the picture that I wanted to paint is very much the context of thriving linear economy, which I'm sure all of you are very well familiar with, which starts by sourcing, refining, producing, selling, using, and definitely incinerating and landfilling at the very end. And a fashion and textiles industry is a poster child of this way of operating. So it's caused natural resources to be depleted with no way back. It's employing hundreds and billions of people around the world to produce more and more every year. And as it was already highlighted by Maria and Charis, only 1% of that waste is currently used in textile recycling. And unfortunately, this statistic is not changing as fast as we would like to be. It's not changing as fast as our consumption rates are growing. So to put it in perspective, circular economy is creating this framework that we publish every year under our circularity gap report. And this is where we can see how the resources extracted translate into societal needs. And we can sort of position where the textile industry is there, comparing to other societal needs. And we can very much see it while, for example, construction and the build industry is definitely creating products that last, so buildings. And the fashion industry is the one that definitely creates products that flow. So products that we will use for a specific number of years, but unfortunately, products that we use for a specific number of weeks too often. And so it is that the linear economy today consumes over 100 billion tons of materials annually, and this has tripled in the last 50 years. It's emitting 59 gigatons of greenhouse gases. And as it was mentioned already today, we are only 8.6% circular. So only 8.6% of the resources we extract, we are able to put back into the system. And for textiles, that's much less than that. And what is that creating? Well, it's creating a world that is 3 to 6 degrees warmer. So it's putting us on a pathway way off from 1.5 degree. It's causing growing inequalities in global societies, and it's accelerating the biodiversity loss. And the global value chains of fashion are huge, are somehow a contributor to that. So we are currently in this situation where we're like a frog put in a boiling water. And now the question is whether we can mobilize ourselves to jump out in time. So it's definitely time to rethink everything and redesign the system. And this is, of course, the proposition that the circular economy offers. So it is whether through technical cycle or through biocycle, to be able to return the resources into their flow. So we encourage to maintain the products for longer, reuse them, remanufacture them, recycle, or design them in a way that they can return to the biocycle safely. How many minutes do I have left? Charis?
You can finish this, no problem, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of projects in our textiles program, and I selected those that I thought were most relevant to city stakeholders. So let me quickly run you through this. So in textiles program over the last year, our huge and groundbreaking project has been in partnership with Fashion for Good. It's called Sorting for Circularity, because as you're probably going to hear more from Rustem today, sorting of textiles is a huge bottleneck where we're losing a lot of resources. So first of all, we're losing post-consumer textiles because they're not collected separately still in many countries, which is going to change with the Textiles Directive, which invites every country to collect the textile waste separately from 2025. But basically what we wanted to do was to apply the near-infrared scanning technology, so the technology that can recognize the composition of textiles pretty quickly and pretty accurately We applied it to map the material composition of post-consumer textile waste. So what is it that consumers are disposing of? Basically, we wanted to map this against the capabilities of recyclers. So this is what we throw away. This is what recycles could take on. Why isn't there more exchange between them happening? So very much to increase the rates of recycling, we were looking at sorting facilities in Netherlands, Belgium, United Kingdom, Spain, Poland, and Germany. And this report is coming out 27th of September. So just to reveal a little bit from what nobody knows yet, we scanned 22 tons of post-consumer textile waste in Europe. And this is the biggest sample to be tested in that way so far. So I really, really hope that this new data is going to stimulate all the stakeholders industry to take new steps towards increasing the collection and recycling rates. Let me keep going through this. One project in the past that has significantly helped us build the capacity for sorting and recycling and understand this landscape better is FiberSort. So it's a project that ended in 2021, which looks at mechanical sorting instead of manual sorting, because you must know that all the post-consumer textiles in Europe, if they are being sorted, they're being manually sorted, and they are sorted based on the quality. So we're only looking at the things that we could potentially resell to someone. We are not looking at products as potential resource for something else. For new textiles, for example. So we are hardly ever sorting for recycling currently. The current situation is that we are sorting for post-consumer markets. And as Maria was saying, a lot of them are outside of Europe, which means that we are exporting our problem. We are exporting our low-value textile waste to be handled by somebody else. Another very, very interesting angle that my team has been developing is to look at the more social and labor consequences of circular value chains. So putting textiles to work is an example of an initiative focused on the Dutch market, but this methodology could very well be applied to other countries, where we looked at 3 scenarios and employment effects. So how could circular economy for textiles look like in Europe, and what employment effects it would bring? What will happen to sorters? What will happen to recyclers? What will happen to people with sewing and manufacturing skills? And what skills do we need to be able to boost this market in Europe? And lastly, this global perspective. So project that we're working on with UNIDO and Chatham House and the European Commission with the funding from European Investment Bank is Switch. And this is something we're very, very proud of, because it's exactly applying this global perspective and working with multinational corporations and their business partners in low-income countries, and looking at how we can stimulate the adoption of circular manufacturing practices on both ends. So this is very much in the inception phase right now, but I hope we will bring scalable outcomes from this project that will be useful to actors in Europe and beyond. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's all I wanted to share today.
Thank you, Ola. Indeed, it's very, very interesting projects you guys are working with, because usually we think of circular economy as a localized processes, but nevertheless, we all know that the modern global supply chains you cannot deal with. You have to also deal with it in a larger and a global scale. Thank you very much for your input. Now we would like to shift gears and approach to the theme of actions. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Rustan, and I think we can completely say you are the only one speaker here today to have daily contact and physical contact with the topic we're talking about. So the floor is yours, Rustan. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Unfortunately, yes. I have to tell you that I'm running a bit out of time, so I'm going to keep my presentation short so we can have the Q&A, because I think that will be most valuable use of the time. So I work at a waste company here in southern part of Sweden called CSAM, and we've been around for close to 50 years now. And as you might know, Sweden is a country where we recycle a lot of our waste. When it comes to household waste in Sweden, we recycle either to new materials or to energy, more than 99%, so less than 1% to landfill. But when it comes to textiles, the numbers are as low as mentioned before, even here in Sweden. So what it ends up in incineration, and I don't call that proper recycling. And even though we're allowed to be by EU because we're so energy efficient, we produce a lot of heat and electricity. Here in Malmö, where we have our waste energy plant, we produce a lot of electricity, but also 70% of all heat for our households in the city. So we put to use what we incinerate. So it's not just gone, but it's certainly not circular. When it comes to clothes, the numbers of recycling textile to textile is, like most other countries, Western countries, 1 to 2%. So, and the problem was, of course, it's cheap with new virgin materials, and I'm glad to see that there are incentives to make it more expensive with virgin materials, because that's necessary. I want to address the fact that we saw earlier on the previous presentation before Ola, that we have now targets for recycling and to sort out textiles in the EU and produce a responsibility system. But like, for instance, plastic, which is quite had shared a lot of the common problems with textiles, is that it's not enough that it's recyclable. There has to be a market as well. There has to be somebody willing to recycle it. So the producer responsibility, in my mind, has to be better formed, because you can design a garment and says it's recyclable, but not if nobody wants to buy the material after we recycle it. But what we did, we built the world's first fully scaled, fully automated sorting machine for textiles. And so we can put in a lot of clothes into it. It comes in bales like that to us, post-consumer clothes, for instance. We put it in the machine, and the machine automatically, using infrared lighting, sort the textiles into what kind of fabric. So we can say we want at least 95% purity of cotton, and into color. So we can say we want white cotton, for instance, or blue cotton. Then we're going to get denim, 90% denim. So we built this machine because we wanted to supply the market with a lot of materials, sorted materials, so they can say that, oh, we can do something with this and we can actually recycle it. And we're the first. It's very exciting. And now we actually have so many collaborations going on. So now we're lacking material in. So we're looking for more material in now. And we have signed a deal with a Swedish company that will take all our cotton, and it's amazing. But I have to address this. This won't fix the climate problem, because a recycled textile to textile piece of garment, like a t-shirt, only reduces the climate footprint by 10 to 15% compared to new. And this is if it's full-scale operation. So we have to address that Ola was already addressing, the unsustainable behaviors when we shop. And when I educate people in my role as an environmental educator, I have a few examples to how to describe what's going on today. And one of the little thing I use is what we call the house, where you have to pretend to be a Swedish person living in a house together with your family, you're 4, and you will generate then 2 metric tons of waste per year. That's the Swedish number of how much a regular family generates in waste in Sweden today, 2 tons a year. What would happen if you couldn't throw any waste out of your home? Well, it would get full and start to smell, and it would be hazardous and very disgusting, right? So then I ask my audience to give me an example how to then fix that problem if it suddenly wasn't possible to discard of your waste. Well, most people try to incinerate it. When I say, well, the smoke is not allowed to leave the house either, you're going to die. And then they start to tackle the problems in many different ways, burying the waste in the basement. So I asked them, where are you going to put the soil that you dig up? Well, then we just we dig a new hole. No, not sustainable. So, and the reason behind this question or this challenge is, of course, that they have to start at putting less waste into the house. That's the only solution possible. And this is important because then now we start to discuss what can we change in business models with still having the same standards. And Ola was also addressing the designed obsolescence. Of course, we can't do that. In Sweden, we throw out so much stuff just because there's planned obsolescence in the products still. We will look at new business models. But the main reason why I had this exercise is, of course, because it's true. We live in a house where you can't throw any waste out. The house is round, it's big, and we're a few billion in our family. So there are no waste trucks coming from Jupiter and Mars, and we have to live with that waste. And this is, of course, a simplific way of describing it, but it's also true. When it comes to textiles in Sweden, I'm just going to give you a few examples how it works in Sweden. We are one of the best countries in the world when it comes to recycling overall of waste. I think with 4 countries that match us. And as I mentioned, less than 1% goes to landfill of household waste. But our footprint is huge. And waste management in Sweden, our emissions to air and water and climate change has increased, even though we're the best in the world. We're polluting more now than back in the day when we put everything to landfill, which we did in the 60s. Why? Because there's more and more waste. And this is the same when it comes to textile consumption. In Sweden, home decoration textiles, which is the most common form of shopping textiles actually, blankets, pillows, and all that, has increased the last 10 years by 74%. And we didn't lack blankets back in the 10 years ago here in Sweden. We were still a very rich country 10 years ago. So we're buying more and more stuff. And there was actually a report that stated, and there were tens of thousands of Swedish people participating in this study, that 80% of Swedes often had a sense of, they had a lack of room in their wardrobes. They couldn't fit in the clothes. It was full. A third out of them even had problems closing the door. So it is full in, that's what we experienced. We have full wardrobes. 81% in the same study said they often had a sense of having nothing to wear. So we're standing in front of full wardrobes feeling like we have nothing to wear. And this we have to change, first of all, because our fantastic plant won't fix the problem. Recycling of clothes will reduce the climate impact by 10 to 15%, no more. And you described earlier in the presentation how big part of the total impact textile consumption is. It's the 4th largest in the EU. So we have to address the top of the waste hierarchy first before building this plant. So yes, we're very proud of our plant Siptex. You can, I'm going to type in the chat box the address to see it on YouTube. You are going to see me walking around describing exactly how it works. And it's an amazing machine, and we're very proud of it. And we hope to deliver materials to the market that they need so they can use recycled fibers instead of new, but it won't fix the problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rustam, for your sobering messages. And now we would like to take you to a completely different region where, as Rustam described, maybe quite the opposite, higher percentage of landfill, but much less of carbon footprint. And the circular economy activity is almost an existing activity, pre-gearing for them. Unfortunately, Yumi is not able to be with us today. However, she has offered us a pre-recorded message, and it would take us roughly 10 minutes. So enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Yomi Odutola, and I'm the Director for Relationships and Networks, Circular Economy Innovation Partnership, Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for inviting us to this webinar to speak on circular textiles and fashion in Lagos. The problem we're looking to solve is pollution, clogged waterways, fast fashion. We want to rethink how we do fashion in Lagos. Currently, we throw away old clothes. Sometimes we give to members of our families, sometimes members of our community or religious organization. Do fashion houses reduce their collections or their output? Do we repurpose some of our old clothes into soft furnishings, maybe? Can we just rethink what we're currently doing with fashion in Lagos? And the answer is yes, some of us do already, but it's just not enough. Can we reduce our social and seasonal purchases? Nigeria is fortunate to have one main season throughout the year. Yes, there's a dry and there's a rainy season, but we do not necessarily have to wear different clothes for this. We can wear the same clothes throughout the year. And so therefore, we do not need to have so many clothes in our wardrobe. But then the social aspect of it, Nigeria is a very social country. And I say this with all due respect. There's a thing called Ashwebi, where at parties or weddings, people are expected to wear the same fabric print or lace print and come for the party. So you can imagine that every party you have a new purchase of a new print or a new fabric. And this, for me, as beautiful as it is, in the long run is a wasteful culture, it's a wasteful behavior, and one I think that we should reduce over time. And of course, there's excess production on the side of the fashion houses. We don't need so many clothes because we don't have seasons in Nigeria. So we don't need to have collections or seasonal drops. And so that also can lead, we can change it to a more sustainable production in that industry. And then we have a very thriving hand-me-down or second-hand market. It's actually called the Okrika market. And it's a busy one that supports a lot of livelihoods. But the downside to that is the clothes coming from the UK or the US. Can we look in Nigeria and see how we can fill this market with second-hand clothing within Nigeria and not having to import it? But like I mentioned earlier, it's also a cultural taboo to give our old clothes to strangers, more or less. How do we overcome this challenge? The role of the local government is to provide a platform or a network where we can generate or create awareness. We can set up business models on how to run businesses or start businesses in circular waste and textiles. We can run businesses, we can speak to many different ways of saving textile waste. For example, LASEPA has an initiative with the Africa Collect Textiles where for every clothing item brought into the collection bins, they get cash for it. And like I said, it's a taboo, so it's a taboo to give out the old clothes. This is an initiative to draw people out, to drop clothes in the collection boxes. The results will be reduction in pollution in the landfills, birth of new businesses, increased awareness and creativity, especially amongst the youth, and of course, affordable fashion options. And these success factors are hinged on business opportunities, creativity, and rethinking new purchases. In the videos we're going to show you, we have fashion houses, Abaya Lagos, Tai and Jola, showing you what they do with offcuts, turbans, blouses, bags, carrier bags. We also have the Loma Academy alumni, whose initiative is actually called Why Waste It, and what she's done with her fabric offcuts or textile waste. And we have the LASEPA Joint Partner Initiative with the Africa Collect Textiles Act, which some of you might know. And of course, we have a video on the second-hand Okrika market, which is a thriving market in Lagos, supporting loads of livelihoods. We hope this video will showcase what Lagos what circularity is in Lagos, especially in the fashion and textiles industry. And we hope to champion this course some more, and hopefully it will be the norm for us. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sally Hat, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Abaya Lagos. We started this brand about 7 years ago to cater to discerning clients who are more inclined to covering their hair for whatever reason. I personally, my personal story was that I went natural with my hair and I had bad hair days, so I had to, figure out a solution to allow me to conduct my day-to-day affairs because I had a really busy schedule. As the years went by, we went into clothing, so we now do modest wear clothing for the discerning client. The brand is positioned as an intermediary luxury brand, and even at that, we try as much as possible to be very conscious about the environment. So in our answer to that, we were able to do upcycled pieces where we take our offcuts from items that we make and we turn them into nice turbans that are easy picks for gifting and for people who really want to live a simple life or dress simply but elegantly.
My name is Bola Ramos, founder at YWC Limited. In Nigeria today, fashion waste generates about 3.8 million tons of the total waste generated, out of which just 20 to 30% of this waste are properly collected. YWC is a circular and sustainable brand that aims at diverting at least 1,000 tons of fashion waste from the landfills and water body annually by converting them into household items, gift items, apparel and artwork. Within 2 months of operations, we were able to convert 0.05 tons of waste into 650,000 and also made 300,000 naira a day by converting 0.1 tons of fabric offcut into 1,000 nose masks.
Hello, my name is Eno Andrew Essien, and I'm one of the founders of ACT, Africa Collect Textiles in Lagos, Nigeria. We are extending the lives of textiles by collecting used clothes, footwear and textile waste. We place collection containers all over Lagos for people to drop off textiles, footwears they no longer use. After sorting, we prepare them for reuse. We recycle them into bags, toys, footwear, and filling materials. Through our activities, we avoid textiles from ending up in nature. We create jobs and support various charity causes. Join us in our mission to make Lagos clean and safe.
My name is Michael Guy.
Okay, so how long have you been in the Okrika business?
Well, it's a long shot. Let's just say 5 years.
So, where the clothes they come from, the Okrika clothes? Where are the places where you think say the clothes they come from?
Our clothes, we get some clothes that come from UK, some Nigeria.
Oh, okay. Which challenges una they face when una go buy? Where una they buy for Nigeria?
That is Nigeria, I don't go buy market. You just go there, the other time for so I will see better to buy. And if you want to sell our market, and let's say, one customer will follow up to us buy, will do anyhow.
Okay, so customers they use una do.
Well, for many challenges, but we for the challenges.
So how you can't get money? Like, say the money they flow well for you to take care of your family and everything.
Well, a nice question, sir. Although the business don't pay, I don't go still live like this.
Okay, say they pay you.
When God bless me back like this, we can spend better money, do the business very well, so we see better money, clean and get.
Thank you so much, Yomi, for the video you have provided. I think that's take us to a perfect ending from the input of our speakers. As we can see from the video, you can really understand the textures and the sounds, and really understand another part of the world, can really give us a more complete picture of the topic we talk about. Many things I have learned from the video, but due to the time restraint, I think now we can go on to our next session, which is more addressing the question from the audience. Hopefully that some of the speaker can help us to answer those questions. And of course, if any of you still have urgent question from both the audience, also the speakers, do feel free to share them with us. So maybe I would give the floor to my colleague, Caris, and she will help us to facilitate this Q&A sessions.
Thank you very much, Ingshi, and thank you to all of our speakers. I think we've had a very interesting session with a lot of different inputs. So I'm just looking at the Q&A, and I see that a lot of questions are actually still addressed to Maria from the Commission. So perhaps I see one question, Oda, that I think you already answered. But maybe you want to expand more. The question is, how do you deal with the social economy partners who are incentivized for more manual employment rather than machine sorting for recycling?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I took that on the chat, but maybe that was a bit too early. Yeah, so they're playing a core crucial role in evaluating the quality of post-consumer textiles. So it's, I want to say, 100-year-old industry, and many facilities that we have worked with, they're part of this global network of trading post-consumer textiles. And for them to be sorted according to quality is core for, well, first of all, for its core, to maintain the sorting business. But second of all, it's core to ensure that ideally every rewearable textile can find a second market. So that's why it was so important for us. We did one project where we created a completely automated sorting technology, but then we did another project working with manual sorting and also looking at, we used the handheld NIR, near infrared sorting scanner. So actually you work with professional sorters who are normally sorting based on quality, and now they start sorting based on composition. So it was a great learning curve for the sorters, for the sorting facilities, to open up to this idea that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Because, looking at the projects such as putting textiles to work, I think we've learned that it's the most important to find the best scenario for the current situation in a current country or region. You're not to just cut out all the jobs and create an automated plant, but with huge investment, but to find optimal scenario, I guess, from both social and environmental perspective. So I don't know if that's answering the question. But yeah, our aim was to engage them 100% and definitely not exclude them from, building our circular scenarios. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that is a good technology to work with. And I think this is also what the SIPTEX plant is really working with, that Rustan mentioned as well. So I don't see any other questions that are addressed to, I see a new question from Nikki, but I think it's more comment, unless you will have a question, Nikki. But maybe I'd like to ask a question to Rustan then, because I know that the plant was done in cooperation with the city of Weimar. So I was wondering if you can explain more the relation with the city and how you're working with the city to tackle textile recycling.
I think Rustan has left the webinar, so but definitely I think we can ask him this question by email.
Okay, great. Then I would just open the floor for any other questions right now.
It seems the topic is pretty clear. We still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, then we have a few last slides that we would like to share with you to close the session. So Ingshi, maybe I can hand back to you to introduce the Switch Asia project.
I think due to the constraint, maybe I will skip the introduction of this project, more go on to some practical announcement of the following webinar. Yes, thank you, Karis. So thank you for all the speakers, your input, your time, and all the participants. If you do find today's webinar session is interested to be shared with your friends and colleagues, as mentioned, you can always find, you will find the recorded session on our eClass Circular platform, as well as you can find the previous recorded webinar. Previously, we already had circular economy with plastic and circular economy with building and constructions. Lots of interesting discussions, just like today. For example, the question about how to make the whole process more socially equitable. We also had a very similar question for the topic of building and construction, where we brought a speaker from International Human Rights and Business Agency. In that discussion, you can find how do we incorporate social justice and circular economy. Nevertheless, from our website, you can also find a lot of interesting case studies. Part of it we have presented today. And so this is not the last webinar of this webinar series. So we sincerely invite you to our next webinar, which is about circular water and sanitation. That will be 27th October at the same time like today. So at the end, I would like to, again, really thanks for our speaker, Karis, Maria, Ola, Rustan, and Yomi for your very valuable input. Personally, I find this is very content-rich session, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you for your participation for all the participants. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please do get in touch with us through this email. Either is regarding project initiative of eClass, or you have a question that you thought of, you want to ask for our speaker. We are also happy to relay those comments or your inquiry to the speaker today. So again, thank you and have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you also from my side, and I can just encourage you to look into our previous webinars and get in touch with us if you would like to share any initiatives. So thank you very much and goodbye.